Hey there, AO community. Brad Stevens here. Excited for my mentor session. I think I'm going on my fifth or sixth month here doing these, and absolutely love sharing the content. And thanks so much for the feedback that I've gotten from everybody. I try and do these in a way to give you very practical examples, takeaways, resources, tools to really have an impact, immediately for you. So, brief background: I've been a lifetime entrepreneur for 20 years. I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Had a number of different companies, built product-based businesses, service-based businesses over the last 20 years. All my companies have kind of had a global nature to them in distribution and production. And my current company is called Outsource Access, and we provide a fully managed virtual assistant service out of the Philippines for business owners all over the world. Our kind of core focus is helping entrepreneurial-minded businesses, realize their potential by truly making offshore affordable resources accessible to them. So we're about 180 staff now that we've gotten to, or just under. We're adding about 15 to 20 per month, so in a high growth phase, and managing this whole organization, on the other side of the globe. So get a chance to see a lot of cross section of different businesses, different industries, different challenges everybody's dealing with. Our clients are in every industry imaginable, and we're doing all kinds of different themes within those businesses, operations and marketing and finance. So I got a lot to bring to the table from those experiences, as well as my own, having a number of companies over the last 20 years. So we'll jump right into the questions and see if we can add some value here today. All right, first question. Name of submitter is Christopher Joseph. Question asked, do you have a recommended books or resources for building up my inner salesman foundations? I have very little sales experience, if any at all. I'm building a software for a streaming gaming industry, and I'm looking to pitch for letter of intent. I know it services a pain point, but I still have to be able to present and speak properly if I'm to get a letter of intent for potential use. So resources for general sales, software sales, gaming, entertainment, or building myself up, public speaking, or confidence are all welcomed. Thank you in advance. So every entrepreneur's got to be a salesman on the first hat that you have to wear. No doubt. You've got to believe in what you sell and what you offer, and it's got to be communicated in your energy and how you share what your product or service is, and you truly have to believe in it. A lot of times I'll share as a preface, as I see a lot of engineers and engineer minded, they're developing a lot of software, is it's kind of, if you build it they will come mentality, where it's like, this is the most amazing software imaginable. How could people not stumble over themselves to want it? It does X, Y, and Z better. And it's one of the biggest fallacies. Regardless if you have the best widget and the best software ever made, a lot of times the more inferior products tend to win out because they have better salesmanship and strategy. So the fact that you're asking this is really key, in knowing that you place value on the sales approach and strategy. And so there's a couple things I'll share. If you're the one that's going to be the spokesman for it, a lot of times I find engineering founders kind of end up getting a partner or a hire that has more of that sales and marketing and kind of outgoing type of personality, and that may not be you, Christopher, as far as. But if it's something that you find is kind of a weakness, it may be helpful in bringing someone that can kind of provide that strength. As far as books go in content, one of my favorite books that I gave to all my salespeople is called "What Great Salespeople Do: The Power of Selling Through Story, and Emotion" by Michael Bosworth. There's tons of great sales books. Sean actually just sent out a great list, that PDF that he sent not too long ago. But I really love this one, and I have a PDF summary of it I'll actually post in the Facebook chat here for everybody. But this is one of the biggest failure points I find, and I'll share this with you, that if public speaking and so forth is a little bit of a challenge for you, start with the quality of the content first, right? And so if you get that part nailed down properly, the rest kind of, it's obviously critical and significant, but have a good kind of baseline understanding of the content. And so what this book talks about is, and use it heavily in our current business and in my prior companies, is don't sell through feature and benefit all the time, right? Everybody's all about feature and benefit and what it does and how it's better than the competitors and so on and so forth. Share that, but then really put it in the wrapper of story, and having very clear stories and examples of people that are in a pain point, or you're pitching kind of an initial software product, but you can create that scenario and that story of why what you're offering can have an impact. Here you have Johnny. This is the pain point. This is what he was dealing with. This is what it was introduced. This is how it solved his problem, and this is how his life was different, afterwards. Uh, in my last company, I do in my current company, but in my last company, we sold teeth whitening products to the dental industry and the beauty industry. And we got so refined in this process that we knew all the objections that people, after a lot of conversations, we found out the different objections that people have. And we would ultimately categorize all of those. And literally in a spreadsheet, every single objection, right, that somebody would have about buying our product in the teeth whitening space. Oh, what about sensitivity? What about price point? Or you're a new brand that nobody knows, right? We would have a story, and it would be a true story from one of our experiences with clients that our sales team could go to and immediately say, yeah, Dr. Smith, I can relate to you. I understand you're concerned about sensitivity. And I actually had another doctor, Dr. James Smith in St. Louis, had the exact same concern, right? But he ended up moving forward with us. He got the product. He was really delightfully surprised that they didn't have the sensitivity issues because of XYZ formula structures that we do. And he actually ended up winning back some cases in whitening that he didn't have otherwise. So it would literally have a story beside every single objection to be story driven to handle every objection, not just share back, no, we don't have sensitivity because we use XYZ formulation in our hydrogen peroxide so it doesn't cause it. Tell everything through the lens of story. So I would just encourage that approach and through story and emotion. And again, I'll share the PDF version of the summary of that. So that you're just well equipped to respond to that. And just whatever you do in the future going forward, even when I do sales right now on VAs and our team, whenever we're sharing the product and experience, always parse off and tell a story. For example, we share, one of the things that we do is we provide, a bunch of tactical resources supporting the VA. So if there's something you need outside of their skill set, we have over 200 specialized resources that support them. And I said, let me give you an example. We have one client that, been working with this VA for a number of months and all of a sudden got a bunch of raw footage and wanted some videos edited. And so the VA is not an expert in video editing. So the client just reached out to the VA, sent the raw footage. The VA managed the video editor, got it done and back to him, and he was blown away by the quality of what we were able to kind of deliver. So I did a little bit more detail around the story, but have those stories that you can parse off in always in sales. I find it makes a huge difference. It makes it much more relatable where people can connect to the content. And I would just say have your confidence, assuming the sale and the confidence in what you have. Good salespeople, and a lot of times when you're selling to salespeople a lot of times, and they can sniff out weakness and lack of confidence. So I would just make sure you have that confidence level in what you're selling and what it can do, both with the feature and benefit and the stories to support it if you can, and it'll really kind of translate. So that's the main book I would recommend around that to kind of drive content. Next question is Francesca Queso, and she's asking, how do you deal with the possibility of your employees or contractors stealing your customers? Business description: I own a copywriting business and I'm always hiring freelancers to deliver on content projects. I sometimes worry that they might approach my existing clients and offer to handle their content needs for less. So in our business, we kind of crossed this path and have navigated it. And so what I would share is two things. One thing that we do in our business and bringing on VAs, there's obviously people that come to work with us in our company. We provide a managed service. They can go and get their own clients, right? They can go on online jobs. They could go to Fiverr. They could go to Upwork and post and get their own, find other people that want to hire them to do work, and pay them directly. And in some cases, they could make more money in some cases that way. And there's benefits, to that. And then working with us is a different experience because we bring them on and we kind of really treat them more like a full-time, staff relationship and provide a bunch of additional benefits. With a steady flow of clients, we provide a culture, we provide infrastructure. We're very committed to their personal growth and so forth. And this may be kind of like what you offer comparatively. So I would say part of this starts at the very beginning when you bring someone on and say, look, this is what our company's about. This is what we do, right? This is the path you can take, right? And if you're interested in going and getting your own clients, and yes, maybe you can make some additional money and so forth, and that's what that looks like, let's just be real clear up front. This is what I bring to the table, right? And I'm assuming that what you're providing is, as far as the environment, the opportunity, the steady flow and consistency of business. Maybe they make less because obviously you have to make a profit in the process. But you're providing a consistent, kind of experience. So I would just be extremely overt about that, very, very clear up front. And then secondly, in the agreement that you sign with them, a contractor agreement, is I would have that included and incorporated in it. We have something very clear in ours that, a non-solicitation. We spend a lot of time and dollars and effort to get clients and bring them in the door. I mean, myself traveling all over the world and speaking and all the stuff that goes in. And a lot of times the individual staff sometimes doesn't understand or appreciate the infrastructure that's put in place and understand that, there's a lot of additional costs aside from what you just pay them to grow and build the business. So we try and educate that up front and create a non-solicitation and clarity of that in the agreements. They understand that they cannot solicit. And you can kind of address that very clearly. There's tons of templates online for non-solicitation, so at least it's in writing and very clear. Now, can they violate that and force you to have to pursue it? And then you got to make the call whether or not legally it's worth it for you to pursue it. But it kind of puts a clear message in place. And it's understandable. And I want people to understand it's fine. If they want to go down that path to begin with, then do so, please. But if what you're looking for is what we offer and you want to build a relationship and growth and you're giving them a career path and giving them an opportunity as well. Do they have an opportunity to make more, earn more, bonus, and so forth? So that can kind of bridge the gap from what they see appeal of maybe earning more directly if they went to go hire directly or work for clients without kind of going through you as that process. And then I would, again, go back to stories. I would have some stories to share about people that went down that path and, they thought the grass was green on the other side and what ended up happening. And, they came back to you 6 months later and said, I'm really sorry. I didn't realize how challenging it was to get clients. I'd rather work for you and have this arrangement. So just a couple things I'd share kind of on that topic. Next question, Michael Pliley asked the question, how do you know who to hire next, a service manager or salesperson? We've taken a big hit this year. I need both positions, but I need more sales to keep a service manager busy. Where can I find a salesperson and make sure they are a good fit for my team and my needs? Could it be possible to find a person that could do both positions until they only fill the service position? Yeah, I mean, sales cures all. When it comes to entrepreneurship and selling, particularly in the time that we're in my opinion, sales always kind of has to come first and be a top priority. You've got to get dollars in the door, and that's got to be the focus. Now, you don't compromise quality in the delivery, right? And so, as you said in there, you've got you need more sales to keep a service manager, busy. So it doesn't sound like you'd be overstripping kind of your capabilities there, but would look for someone in the sales focus first. Now, you're talking about someone that could maybe transition, right, where they do sales and then they kind of go into the full service position. The only thing I'll share is it's usually two different personalities. In my last company, there's a great book, Predictable Revenue. If you haven't read it, Predictable Revenue is a great book written by the guy that actually helped build the whole Salesforce.com sales organization. And it really completely changed how I built my sales team in my last company. And having the hunters, those that are closing deals, getting initial deals versus kind of the nurturers, right? And I found it's just very, very different, personalities. Now, the person that's the hunter that's closing new deals and bringing new deals in the door and so forth, they don't have the patience to hold hands and nurture and so forth. You want that person focused on closing deals, initial relationship, and then moving on to the next one and getting deals in the door, right? And then the person that's more the nurturer, and I'm making some assumptions about this service manager type of role you're talking about, but I had a similar one in my last business in the teeth whitening where we had people that focused on closing deals and getting dentists and spas and salons in the door and buying our products. And then we had the account managers, the service managers, who were then there to service, support. Now, they still had a sales capability to them, right? And they got bonus on expanding that account. But their focus was more on the nurture side and land and expand and nurture. So I would say it's probably easier to find someone that can kind of go from the closing deals to kind of being a nurturer. But just kind of ask those questions ahead of time as you're going into it if you're going to look at someone shitting into that position. But ultimately, going forward, it's going to be two different people I've found personality-wise. And what I learned in that Predictable Revenue book is just you got to have that person that's hungry, what they are excited about, and they don't want to nurture. And the nurturers, they don't want to have to go and close new deals and have a quota every single week of new stuff that they're having to bring in the door. So that's kind of a feedback on the approach I'd take. Other thing I would say is just highly, highly vet when you're bringing salespeople in to the extent that you can. A lot of people can talk a good game. But really just dig deeper into who they are. Highly recommend doing, one of the personality profile assessments. If you haven't done one, doing one yourself and making that a part. I mean, we use DISC. You can use Colby. You can use Enneagram. You can use Predictive Index. People have different philosophies on a bunch of different ones that are out there. We use the DISC and the Colby is one that we've used, and we're actually starting to look at Enneagram. But Predictive Index is another really good one that I actually just took as part of a speaker that I saw. But having some kind of like an index to figure out where are their strengths and weaknesses is just invaluable. And that's one thing we do with like all of our VAs. We have them go through a very specific assessment process. We have clarity because questions can only get you so far sometimes on how they answer them. And just ask things too. I mean, particularly with salespeople, when you ask at the beginning, how are things, getting to the interview today? If you're doing it in person, right? Or how are things going with COVID-19? And just find out, are they a positive, optimistic person, or is something always wrong? Right. That's one tip a person gave me a while back ago in that initial interview questions before you get into the real meat of it is just see how do they approach life? How do they think about things? Are they half full? Are they half empty? Because salespeople that are always making excuses nonstop are always going to be a challenge. Having them present and pitch to you of how they would pitch your service, have them look at your website, have them take the information that's available and make that a part of what they need to expect to doing that interview. I would definitely key into that book, What Great Salespeople Do, and have them tell a story-driven sales approach, maybe from their prior work. And then just an open-ended question of ask, what is your approach to sales? And just leave it open-ended and just see how do they think about that? Do they focus purely as about feature and benefit and product, or do they talk about the relationship side and getting to know and understand the customer and who they are? It really kind of give you some insights on who's going to be a better fit for that. So just some additional insights as you kind of go down that path and from a hiring standpoint. All right, next person, Eric Blandino. Eric actually spoke to him not too long ago. Question he asked, I love the idea of doing something fun with our team for 2 hours during work time once a month in the form of leadership games, escape rooms. Is this something to be done monthly, bi-monthly, or quarterly? And business description, we're a rat exclusion service company, and our techs mostly work in the field independently. There are times we work together in a larger project. I'm asking this question because I want the techs to learn, bond, and have fun, but do not lose the lessons that are being discovered and how to work with each other by the games, if too frequent or not. So Eric, I guess part of the question, as you said, and you noted there in the description a little bit, is, what is the motivation for doing it? Are you doing it for bonding? With the team, for them to kind of know and to connect one another, or is also part of the motivation for them to show that you care about their development and growth, because it kind of can drive a little bit on how you structure, and I'll kind of speak to both of those angles, because I'm assuming those are probably both elements you're trying to ultimately pursue, because this is something that we're fanatical about in our company. Particularly in the Philippines, and the culture there is traditionally people don't, they aren't paying people properly. They don't treat them well. They don't care about their personal growth and development. They have this super hierarchical, power trip situation with leaders and kind of the frontline staff. And so, it's something we have to be super, super, intentional about. So on one thing I would say that if part of your goal is sharing that you care about them and kind of what, from a culture standpoint and kind of retention, is I'd share, and we actually had an EOS implementer, if you guys are familiar with the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I'm a big fan of it. We actually just rolled it out to our whole team in the Philippines. We had a speaker come in our forum for an organization I'm in, and she shared the survey results of talking to tons and tons of employees and sharing what do they care the most about in their job. And a lot of you probably heard these before. A lot of times, it's not money, it's not the health insurance, it's not the 401k matching, and so on and so forth. 76% said it's just recognition. It's recognition for and being acknowledged for what I do, not only by their manager, but potentially even higher up than that. So something that I do, and it gives me so much energy, and I love doing as well. And maybe this is something that you do on this topic is just personal messages directly to frontline staff. I mean, we're up to 180 or close to it, staff. And I still personally send a welcome message to every single one of our VAs when they come on board. We have to do it via Skype, obviously, but I send a personal welcome message. I have kind of a banter back and forth with them after they reply back. I share with them I'm a huge fan of leadership, and so I actually share with them a summary of the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. I share with them a link to it and say, hey, part of our core values is we're always about constant learning, and so I thought I'd share with you something I'm deep into that's driving how I'm helping lead our organization. We want to build leaders in our organization. Hopefully you'll find value in this. So doing those personal, you would not believe the novels that people write back to me, our staff, of just being so appreciative that I took time to recognize them and appreciate them. And then I usually spend, 2 to 3 hours a week in different days. And so I have our service manager. When we get great feedback from clients, when our staff have done a great job, our VAs have done a great job, and they've gotten recognition, they share screenshots. We have a Google Doc set up. She posts them. And then I go and write personal messages to each of them, frontline, from the CEO of a 180-person organization down to the frontline staff, and saying, hey, Jane, I just want to share, your manager shared with me XYZ, and recognize it, and just want to say what a fantastic job that you're doing, and really appreciate what you're doing for the company. And do that consistently. And just the impact it makes. It gives me energy because I get to hear from even at the frontline level the impact and hear their feedback on it and seeing how they're doing and the impact they're making with our clients, which is exciting. But it's just the bond and connection, and it's bridging that gap in that hierarchy of connection. It just makes such a big difference. I got that partly from, I mentioned this before, Frank Blake, I think his last name, that turned over, Home Depot, and he talked about one of the biggest things he did when he turned around Home Depot when he kind of came in, was writing 100 handwritten letters to frontline staff every single week, and it made such a difference when the people know that they're recognized and appreciated. And studies have shown this for years, but so many owners still just don't do that. So anyhow, it's part of it sounds like you're focused on building culture and engagement within the organization, but that has been just a very powerful thing that I do, that people know and recognize at a frontline level. I have a friend of mine that's an entrepreneur and has a service-based business, and he's got a plaque that he started giving to employees just to recognize how many years they've been with the company. And for him, he didn't really realize the impact. His staff told him it'd be a good idea to do. He actually got a picture from one of his staff, and it's literally the first thing you see when you walk into that man's home is a plaque of how many years they've been with the company. He just had no idea how much pride, that they take in it. So as entrepreneurs and the owners, we have to kind of look at through the lens of how we see and the impact, and then how our staff can kind of see it, if we're in their shoes from that perspective. So hopefully that's kind of a helpful thing about it. And as far as team building, additional kind of team building sort of initiatives, doing, depending on how frequent or often the team's, getting together, but monthly, typically is kind of a good time frame with our staff. We do, I think, 1 or 2 happy hours, virtual happy hours, per month. And I'll have to check as far as how our team's doing it now, but we were actually doing a daily kind of game quiz. I'll tell you, little quizzes sometimes, and having your teams compete one another. So if you had all your team and you kind of post it out, and I can't remember the platform, I'll post it in the link. And you just have a little daily quiz, and everybody gets a quick cash bonus on whoever kind of offered the best or the right answer for it the quickest. And you send it out via text message to all your texts, right? Or maybe it can even be an answer related to training in their service of what they do at Rat Exclusion Services. It's just little things like that creates competition, engagement, even a little bit of cash spiff in the process that can be really helpful. So sometimes even doing little daily things like that, in addition to kind of the larger get-togethers, can be impactful. Next question is from Aniza. Aniza Fajardo. And question was, what software can help create a survey, and what good ways can I try to market if I don't have a big email listing? Or can I use the survey to help grow my email list? Business description: my business is a financial firm where I'm customizing a program that will help millennials get organized with their finances, get out of debt, and start growing their asset column. I'd like to conduct a survey to collect data to use as marketing content, but also use as a market fit knowledge. Great idea, and I'm always about survey first. So many times when we're trying to come up with ideas, we sort of try to do it in our own head, or maybe with just a couple of our managers and so forth, and just forget to just ask the customer, right? They will tell you what they want and what they need. So I love that you're thinking in that direction. And survey-driven approach is a great strategy in 2 different ways, and I'll share a personal example of how we use it in one of my last companies as well. As far as software to actually execute the survey, I mean, you're obviously very familiar with SurveyMonkey, I'm sure. That's a great one. We use that a ton in our business, and also in this EO organization I'm president of. We just survey our members and kind of get feedback on things. Another one is Google Forms. And a lot of people, if you're not familiar with, I mean, a lot of people use Google Docs and the Google spreadsheets, but Google, as part of their suite, has Google Forms, and it lets you create an online survey. And when people complete it, it actually fills out a Google spreadsheet on the back end, so it automatically dumps your content. And you can have people, upload content, upload videos, all the different question type scenarios. So we've actually started using Google Forms a lot more. Actually, like within our business, when people want to get a VA, we have them take a discovery assessment initially to kind of check boxes and figure out what their needs are. We use a Google form, and then we use that and it kind of drives into a spreadsheet to get content. So in terms of just the technical functionality, use one of those. And the other thing I'd recommend too is on the survey is do a quick video if you can at the top. Keep it like 20 seconds or less. But particularly if you're going after the millennial market and so forth, they're very video driven. And like with Google Forms, it lets you actually embed a video right at the top of the survey. And just keep it super short but super high energy about what you're doing and trying to accomplish. And it just helps provide a little bit more insights in the process that may be helpful. And also get just higher conversion. The other thing is make it epically simple. The biggest thing in surveys is just people just ask too much. So just highly recommend, if you can, keeping it just clickable instead of having to write responses. Letting people choose on a scale from 1 to 10. Do you agree or disagree with this statement? Or, which of these do you think is the biggest issue? But just keeping it super clickable and simple. I know this kind of goes without saying, but it's amazing how many people, and even large corporations, Bank of America the other day, they sent me a survey to give them feedback on something, and I was willing to do it. I want to give companies feedback. But by the time I'm on the second page, I'm like, who in the world created this thing? They do not have the customer in mind. You always have the box, right? So I've always found you always have a box, because you will have 10% of people or so that will write you a novel and will dump their whole life story and give you answers, which is great. And you love those people because you can take that content and use it and see the vocabulary that they use. There's a guy named Ryan Levesque, Ryan Levesque. They wrote a whole book called Ask. And he has a whole software platform, another one that's a survey-driven strategy. And his whole model and business model is about asking questions and how do you ask questions, do a deep dive survey, and then use those responses to kind of get the output. I got halfway through the book, didn't finish it, but it's a great book. It's short, small, but we check it out. It's called Ask. It's a book, Ryan Levesque. You can search him, and kind of gives you a lot of strategy on how to ask questions. But part of what he talks about is that 10% that you do get that will write a novel, is you look at the exact words and vocabulary that they use in describing their challenges and their problem, and you use those exact words in your marketing copy going forward, to your point, right? Using it as a way to do assessment. So it's a great way to get intel, but also figure out the vocabulary of how they're communicating about their market. So to share a specific example of how I did something similar to this, which I agree on too, is in the dental market, in the whitening space, we wanted to find out how people were using teeth whitening to grow and build their practices. And so we did a big survey out to all of our customer base and told them that if they provided an answer for us, then we would then publish an entire report that we would send out to everybody, sharing what everybody's best practices were. And it was a project that was really effective for us by doing that, assembling it, getting everybody to kind of share what their feedback was. And then also from that, we ended up creating a council and asked a certain number of our dental accounts. We didn't end up paying them anything, but for them, just from an ego standpoint, they kind of liked it, and asked them would they be willing to be a part of our council that we would use to inform a lot of our product decisions going forward. So again, it wasn't us trying to come up with it, but our end customer who sees and deals with patients every day, that's ultimately how we want to shape our product. So using that as a published product and giving them, and as a kind of the enticement, I know that gets me every time to fill out a survey, is that they're willing to share with me the results that everybody else did and kind of share the output of the report. I'm more willing to engage. So I think you're along the right track with that. Our next question is Lisa Nikowski. Question: how do you bridge the gap of wanting to start a business to actually starting the business? I'm currently reading as many books as I can as regards to taking the leap and getting my business going. However, I'm wondering how to put the elements together to actually getting it started. Where do you start? What comes first? What are the steps? What's the blueprint? And so many of you have successfully started and run companies. Who better to ask? Thanks in advance. So, as I'm sure a lot of mentors would probably share, I could talk on this for 4 or 5 hours as far as components and breaking down. Uh, but I'll be consistent in kind of my answer where this is concerned, and just a couple of key things is being an entrepreneur myself for 20 years and having different companies and some successes and some not. Is the first thing is if there's something that you're passionate about, right? Everybody kind of talks about that's really important, right? But the first thing is if you find something you want to kind of pursue is put numbers to it, right? It is just, even if you're not a numbers person, learn how to work a spreadsheet in Excel and just do a forecast, right? Do a year, prefer to do at least up to maybe a 3-year, and just get clear on the economics. So many business owners, they fall in love with their own idea, and that's what they end up getting, what motivates them. But the thing never has economic viability, or they never really kind of put thought into, wow, if I spend this much on marketing and advertising, or what's it going to cost me to acquire a customer? How much have I got to charge to make sure I got enough margin to pay for things, right? So I would highly encourage, and I think you guys are starting to kind of form like forum groups, and I know a lot of you have calls with Sean as well, and I'm sure Sean recommends this as well, is just put numbers to something before you do anything else, right? Because as entrepreneurs, like, we can get all excited about the idea, and I don't mean to be rain on the parade. I'm just being a realist, being an entrepreneur for 20 years, right? And this is how I approach businesses differently. Is I love the shiny balls and talking about the creative, fun stuff and creating logos and ideas and telling people about it, right? And that's kind of like where we like, because that's the endorphin hit, right? That's where you get to check the boxes and the excitement of kind of the idea of the business. It's no fun to kind of put numbers to stuff. I mean, I kind of like it. I enjoy numbers, and I kind of like seeing it. For me, there's comfort in numbers to see, okay. And the way I like to build my Excel models, I kind of do a forecast, do it by month, and then I have what I call a variable and cost column, right? A revenue and cost variable column. And what I do is I make it all variable driven. So I put my revenue, right? Then I put my variable expense, okay? So whatever my revenue is, and then what is my variable expense? What is the cost of that product or that good, okay? And if you're a pure service business, then you got more just fixed expense to see what my gross profit is. So if I'm going to sell, widgets, if I'm selling wagons, okay, then my cost of goods sold, and again, a lot of you know what this is, but just kind of reiterating, but I'm amazed at how many entrepreneurs, actually ones that have been in business a long time, that still don't break out their P&Ls this way. But what's the revenue? What's the cost of goods sold? Right? And what's my gross profit? And then what's the minimum fixed expense? Your fixed expense, obviously, your salaries, any other, office space or, equipment you may be having to like amortize or finance, to then see what your net profit is. And then over on the left, create, a revenue variable, right? And put in different price points for your product, right? So if you change it from $12 to $15, have it wire in the formula to ripple out and see what does that look like. Have variables for your costs, right? What if your costs end up being, 5%, 10%, put that in. Right? And then for your marketing budget for cost acquisition, put in 5, 10, 15, 20%. See what you can sustain and let it forecast and see what the bottom line is. And then I highly recommend doing a cumulative number of what does cash add up to, or what does it kind of create in deficit. So if you forecast that out and also get real, if you're serious about the business and want to move forward, what does that 12-month forecast kind of look like? When does it start throwing off positive cash, right? And so how much am I going to need to kind of get to that place? And I just encourage people to face that frog. Eat the frog is kind of, as they call a lot of time, facing the challenging thing. Do that up front, early in the game. And because as much as you are in love with a concept, right, a lot of red ink will kind of make you fall out in love pretty quickly. Ideally, we all want to have that special intersection where you got something you're super passionate about, right, and makes money. And so put the numbers to it as part of that process to commit. So that's the very first step that I would do. And I could spend another hour talking about all the marketing and so on and so forth, but identifying kind of the metrics and then just being real. Is there a viable product outside of your friends and family, as a lot of people talk about? Get that, again, I'm probably a broken record here, but that's why it's a broken record, because it's what people should do. And what you'll hear from a lot of mentors is just get a viable product, get assessments out there so that people can test, evaluate, and outside of your friends and family, and find out, do people want the product? And is there a market? And is there a scalable market and growth? Is it, what they call red water, bloody water, when there's tons of competition, or do you really have a unique niche and opportunity? And just, you can do that. And, that's one thing I love about like outsourcing and VAs. And I'm working on Sean doing a whole presentation to share all of you tons of case studies and examples that lets you fail fast and cheap. It allows you to spin up a logo and a website for a couple $100, get something launched, get it out there. Are people going to like it? Are they engaged with it? And use that as a way to get intel to further shape the product. And constantly in the background, have your financial metrics and your forecast right there kind of in parallel. So you're able to kind of test that back and forth. But always be real with yourself with the numbers. And I know this has been mentioned before, but the E-Myth, if you haven't read it as far as a book, just anybody that's going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to get out of being in and working on the business. Map that plan for yourself as soon as possible. And there's so many people that stay as the technician and are constantly turning the crank for 2, 3, 5, 12 years and never scale. We just had a guy actually that came to our house the other day, had a business for 17 years. We got a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and 1-year-old gets into everything at scale. Amazing how much crap he gets into so fast. So he has a children's home proofing business. He comes in, does an audit, and kind of fixes, will come in and give you all the equipment and actually install all of the baby proofing stuff that you need. Business for 17 years and is still struggling with scale and how to grow and how to expand. He's still the technician. I was like, well, who's going to come in and actually install this stuff? You got a team and so forth. He's like, yeah, no, it's probably going to be me, doing it. Some people just don't ever make that leap. And so if you really want to grow and not own a job but own a business, plan your exit to the work on the business and the strategy side and how you're going to build into your numbers. Again, back to the finances, is how can you pay for people? You may have to take a hit, right? Your finances for a short period of time, right, to bring somebody in, but it's the only way you're going to kind of scale, and grow. So there's a lot more dimensions I could share on that, but hopefully there's some kind of key elements that'll be helpful in the process. All right, next question is Nigel Massey. How and where do I start to begin incorporating systems and processes into my massage therapy business? Background, I'm about to finish massage school and get my license soon. I'm in the process of reinventing myself and beginning a new career late in life. I want to do this one right from the ground up. I want to be automated and set everything up on virtual access. Ultimately, after I build up my reputation in the massage therapy business, I want to be managing virtual systems and processes within or about the massage therapy business. So you can't start on this soon enough. I mean, in processes and systems, again, it's one of those things kind of like doing financial forecasting, as I shared before, that's not the most exciting thing. This is the difference between entrepreneurs that are wantrepreneurs and hopepreneurs versus the actual ones that execute. And creating systems and processes is something that you just have to start doing early in the game. And a lot of you are kind of figuring out as you go, but do everything with a system and process kind of, mentality, as you're expanding and growing. And I know you guys got a great relationship with Trainual that Sean has structured as part of AO. And it is a phenomenal software that will actually help you through that process as well. It does a really good job of stepping you through and how to think through questions as you're looking at kind of mapping systems and processes kind of going forward. So frankly, that'd be a great place that I would start in getting a mindset around process and system. And I would just say, be patient, right? Just have that additional layer of patience to commit to doing the processes and the systems. And one of my favorite tools I always share on here is Screencast-O-Matic, that allows you to like quickly record your screen, your voice, and your mouse. So we use this with all of our VAs and our clients. I mean, we actually require our clients to show us that they can use this tool before we even let them kind of interview VAs. But you basically just click a button, it pops up a little dotted thing on your screen. You can record your screen, your voice, and your mouse. So if you use a tool like a Trainual, you can actually record those videos. And Trainual, I'm sure, may actually be setting up a tool where they can actually embed videos live into their process. But it allows you to quickly record processes, how to click on things, where to do things, how to enter things. If you got software systems or processes, it allows you to record it all, save the video. You can drop the link so people can watch the video when you're teaching people how to do a protocol, or a process. So I would do that to begin with. And then honestly, you're not reinventing the wheel, right? When it comes to a massage therapy business, there's elements to it that I'm sure you're going to differentiate and be unique. It'll be kind of your competitive advantage. But just lean on others in the industry. And there's tons of experts I know, and there's tons of coaches. I mean, I know several people. There's a guy I know that's in the physical therapy industry that's an amazing physical therapist, and he has a whole online platform and coaching model, and he gives you all his templates for all his protocols and processes and tools and everything else as part of their coaching program. And a lot of these people will give it to you free if it's not something you want to pay for. So if I would just Google, massage therapy systems and processes, or massage therapy school systems and tools, you'd be amazing at people that have already invented that wheel. They know it. They've been there, and then maybe they're offering it for a low price, or even some of them for free. You can get kind of those protocols and processes. And then once you actually get going too, a way to revisit that, and if you get staff, is constantly re-ask them, where are your constraints? Because a lot of times businesses operate and people get going down the road and their staff are just doing things super inefficiently, and the owner just doesn't ever ask the question, so it just continues to be inefficient. So one of the first things we do when we work with clients is we ask them to ask their staff 2 questions. Is A, what are you doing every day that doesn't add, that you don't feel is worth the value of your time, of where you think you can contribute? And it's amazing. I've had owners that have had employees for 5-6 years that they ask that question, and that person comes back with a list of things that they never knew that they were doing. Or they said, you're spending 5 hours a month doing X? I had no idea you were doing that. No, that's not. Let's get you out of doing that. So it's a great question to ask, is what are you doing that's not a good use of your time? And then secondly, what do you feel that we could be doing as a business that we can't get to due to having to do this stuff in the first question? And that's another one where your staff will just have a lot of insights and ideas about where can they add value and things you can be doing, but they're so constrained in doing this low level, low value kind of minutia stuff that they transition, that they can't focus on kind of the bigger picture strategic things. So anyway, I'd start with Trainual, use it as a tool, go through their tutorials. I mean, their whole platform and product is all about doing process and protocols. There's a lot that's there. And then kind of use those 2 questions as an approach as you move forward and want to revisit those processes. All right, last question is Bob Guguer. I'm saying that correctly. Question is, if you have an e-commerce website, how would the priority stack up of quality copywriting versus overall website aesthetics? Can good copywriting overcome mediocre website aesthetics, or vice versa? Business description and background. I'm looking to figure out where my priorities should be in terms of putting together knockout copywriting, or focus in on getting an appealing website. Response would weigh in. 2, on what I should outsource and what tasks should I own. And seeing kind of in your business being an ultra premium skincare product, I would say part of this question depends on what industry that you're in. Okay. If you are in like a computer programming industry, I've actually got a buddy of mine that's he has a global organization for cybersecurity experts and professionals. I would say default first to the copy and the content, right? Because those individuals, personality wise, and what they're pursuing and being a part of that organization is all about content, right? It's all about content and expertise. They don't place value in the aesthetics, okay? So it's part of knowing who your audience is. The business you're in, I would say aesthetics is the number one thing. When people are looking for skincare products, I mean, just knowing what your whole industry is, and having been in the spa and salon industry with the teeth whitening space, and having just a wife and a spouse that spends a tremendous amount on this category, I would not have completely subpar, content. I mean, you got to have good English and good phrasing and communication about what your product does. But I would default to great aesthetics first. Incredible photography, great imagery. That's the first impression. I mean, you're an aesthetics skincare product, so that's got to be, in my opinion, the top priority that you got to kind of focus on, initially. There's ways to cost effectively, do that. I mean, you can outsource and get websites built all day long, very cost effectively, very high quality. You can go on Fiverr and Upwork, and you can get incredible high quality WordPress websites. And like if you go to our website, like outsourceaccess.com, like I've got a web development group that's a part of our team that we outsource that to. And then we got that initial site made for less than $500. If you go to outsourceaccess.com, you can kind of see the design and layout. And my speaker website, bradstevenstraining.com, if you go there, same thing. So you can get a really good quality. And what I'll share, I'll give you a quick tip on a WordPress template, because a lot of times you go to get developers if you were to outsource web development, and we do this with all of our clients. A really good one is called Monstroid, Monstroid 2.0. So you can go to, I'm trying to remember the platform. If you just Google Monstroid, it is a WordPress template that has the proper licensing, so you're not having to pay a premium. Now, assuming they haven't changed anything since last time we got it, take a look at the small print of it. but it's a great WordPress template. So when you go have somebody, outsource building a WordPress, they're going to say, hey, do you have a template you want us to use? So it's a great one. So you take a look at it, lets you have all kinds of different layout options you can choose from. You also got to choose one that they kind of go with. But you can get websites built. I mean, like in our model, we have full-time VAs that work with our clients, but a lot of them want websites. We have one client that we have a full-time VA with, been working with him for over a year now, and doing all kinds of stuff, operations and marketing and so forth kind of work. But he wanted to launch a whole new business in a whole different industry and needed to build a logo, get a website built. So we have over 200 specialized tactical people that we maintain supporting our VAs. And a lot of them we found through Upwork and Fiverr. And then we just have a very rigorous vetting process. We do test tasks with them, make sure they're competent. And if they're good, we kind of add them to our roster of people we reference. And this guy actually, he got quoted locally, I don't know, $5,000 to $10,000 to get this website built. It was going to take like 6 months. And we got the whole thing out the door for him, a logo done and a website, using one of our resources for like $600. In posting him, I think we found the guy originally on Upwork, and we've used him for other projects since then. So you can get that stuff very, very cost effectively executed. And then photography, I would check out canstock.com. That's one that we use a lot of. You got Getty Images and so forth. And for your product, you can't skimp on quality images because that's your product and what you're doing. So you may have to pay a little bit of a premium on some of the sites that charge a little bit more, but I've been amazed. Canstockphoto.com. For $5, $10, you can get incredibly high quality images, and you get full licensing rights to use them if you choose the right licensing option with it. You got Unsplash, which is another one that has free images. You may find some great quality there, but those are some cost-effective places that you can go to get images of people, of women, of skin. And then of your products themselves. And I tell you, you'd be amazed. If you got an iPhone 10 or 11 that's got the third lens that has portrait mode, it's amazing, the photography, especially if you get daylight and you go and set your product out on a black kind of canvas. And you can get these little light boxes as well on Amazon.com. If you just do photo light boxes, you can get these incredible little light boxes things. And I'm telling you, with just an iPhone in portrait mode and one of those light boxes, you can get amazing quality product pictures. That can kind of get you by, at least in the near term, from what you may be using. And then for copywriting, aside from writing the copy yourself, you got to write a certain kind of technical elements, kind of a balance of technical writing plus also appealing to the marketing and soft side. And so that may be something you're doing yourself, but you can also go to writeraccess.com. And you can get copywriters on Upwork and Fiverr. There's tons of them out there. I would do a very good job of what you're looking for, give them the specs and requirements, give them a sample maybe of kind of some written content to give them a reference point. So you can post on both of those. But if you go to writeraccess.com, it is a platform that is for nothing but copywriters, contract copywriters all over the world. And these are like former editors of magazines that are now stay-at-home moms and dads that for like $30 will write you an article or write web copy and stuff for you. So you can check out writeraccess.com. As another platform for getting copy. And one other thing I'll share is as you're building your website is for opt-ins, right? So I'm assuming on your site you'll be driving traffic there and want people to kind of opt in, get their email address to send them content to ultimately drive them down a funnel for a nurture sequence, get them to convert. I highly recommend using a welcome mat model. And so we use a platform called sumo.com for this. So, and this, I know it seems very nuanced, but it is a huge difference. So if you've ever gone to websites and you're there for a little bit and all of a sudden a little pop-up comes up in the middle to opt into their newsletter or whatever, and then you just we're pre-programmed to just X out of that because we're against anything that pops up in my face. So what we use is a thing called a welcome mat, and it's an option with sumo.com. You drop the code, you build the little form in the back end, and when somebody's on our site, so if you go to outsourceaccess.com /help, you'll actually be able to see this, or any of our page on our site. Once you're on there for 15 seconds, and it's a welcome mat, and it shuts down the entire screen, right? So first of all, it's disruptive and it's different. And you'd think that would irritate people, but we get 4 to 5 times conversion on people opting in. And what we have is don't opt into our newsletter. Never do that for opt-in my opinion. It just never works. Give them something they can't refuse. So we have the small business survival guide to COVID-19, right? And so it's just got a very, very high takeaway value kind of guide. And all they got to do is put their email address in, not first name, last name, just put their email. But if they don't want it, they just hit no thanks and it rolls the thank you mat right back up. And it doesn't kind of show again to them unless they haven't been back to the site in 30 days. but cannot recommend enough. Make it simple. You'll see on ours, like we got somebody on Fiverr to do a 3D rendering of what our ebook looks like. Even though it's not a true physical book, it looks like it on there. We got a content writer write it. If you opt in, it's a fantastic looking piece. But that gets us better conversion on opt-ins way more than anything. So first of all, have one. Don't just have your phone number or just a contact us form, which most people have. Have something, but make it a super educational. Top 5 things that women overlook in dealing with their skin, or the top 5 things 100 women said that they would never do again in their skin quality. People like lists, they like high takeaway value, and then you got to make it just, I got to have that, right? And make it a drop down, put their email address in, they can opt in. And then a whole other conversation is around nurture sequences. And if you go to our website, go to outsourceaccess.com/help. If you want, you can check out, you can opt in to kind of our guide. And we have a very intentional 20-part nurture sequence. And this goes back to the original question that I got asked about salesmanship. And it's all about building authority. So our first 5 emails is about building authority of ourselves in the marketplace, of why they should pay attention to us. And I provide links to my Inc. magazine articles and speaking on stage at John Maxwell's Leadership Institute and so forth. So now I've gotten credibility. Then I shift to FAQs, right, or case studies. Then I show one case study at a time. This was John, this is the situation, this is their problem, this is how they got a VA with us, and we changed their life. So we have 5 of those, and these get dripped 2 days apart. And then we go to FAQs, and we do one FAQ at a time. Well, what about time zones? I address it, and I even shoot an individual video on each one of those FAQs. So it's a 20-part nurture sequence, but in the order of dealing with the buyer behavior, establishing authority so they'll pay attention to me, do case studies so they can relate, right? But do them very simple and one at a time, and then do each FAQ one at a time. And so those that aren't interested, they're going to opt out, and that's fine. But those that are in consideration of considering VAs and outsourcing and so forth, I'm going to earn the right to stay in their inbox until one of those finally hits the point, and now the shift turns the other way, and they're ready to move forward and convert with us. And at the bottom of every single one of those emails, regardless of education or build authority, at the bottom of every one is an opportunity for them to book a call if they want to move forward. So at some point, I will have tipped over the right domino in their mind that they want to move forward, and they're going to be ready to book a call after they go through that. If they go through that whole 20-part nurture sequence and they have not purchased, we have a long-term nurture that goes once a week that's just a neat, cool tool called our Addictive Tool series, which is just a neat tool like a dash lane or a screencast-o-matic or a Trainual. That's just a neat high takeaway value tool so we can have the right to stay in their nurture sequence long term should they want to engage with us. So I know I've shared this in the past, but it's just, I cannot impress enough. You get people to your site, capture their information, and don't lose them because so much money's lost in the warm leads that want to engage with you, and keep them on that nurture wheel, long term. It's worth the time and effort to invest in building that content. All right, very good. Well, thank you so much for those that participated. Always enjoy doing these. And so, as always, if you guys are interested in learning more about what we do, go to outsourceaccess.com. Nothing else, you can check out our opt-ins and kind of see some of our nurture sequences. And anybody that's interested in exploring VAs, we offer promos and specials for any of the AO community. So you got my contact information there. Look forward to next month. We'll dive into the next set of questions. Take care.